everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today with me, Chandler Bolt. I love the name Chandler Bolt because he's been bolting for quite a long time. He's bolted into Forbes 30 under 30. He's an investor and CEO of Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com. If that seems like a bit of a theme, it is, and we're going to find out more about that. Is the author of 6 best-selling books. He didn't stop at one because he's a driven young man. And also, his most recent book is titled Published. Again, you might notice a theme happening here, published. Self-Publishing School is an Inc. 5000 company, the last 3 years in a row, as one of the 5,000 fastest growing private companies in the US. And as we know, the US is the powerhouse of entrepreneurial spirit, and Bolt, Mr. Bolt, actually personifies that. And he's also the host of the 7-Figure Principles podcast because he hasn't anything better to do during the weekends, and the Self-Publishing School podcast. Again, I think publishing sort of creeps in here somehow. I don't know why, but through his books, podcasts, YouTube channels, and Self-Publishing School, he's helped thousands of people write a book that grows their income, impact, and business. Welcome to the show, Chandler Bolt.
Oh, Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
I didn't realize your name was actually just so appropriate to how you are and what you do and how you act. It's really, really cool. You've been bolting for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, long time. Learned from my parents.
So was that a look? We all get called nicknames at school, don't we? I got called a range of names. I could go into them. In fact, I will. I got called Big Bulldog because I was the oldest brother. I got called Bull Ass, Bulldog, and Bullshit. That's some of the names we got called. What did you get called at school?
Oh man, I got called Bolt. So I think you're on to it with that one. I got called CB. I got called Chan Man. I got called, a couple others. But those are the main ones. Chan Man and Bolt and CB were kind of like the main 3.
Okay. All right. Well, I get called JB occasionally. So
yeah,
a lot of people can't actually pronounce my name properly, so they just go JB. So it's fine. Now, before we get into talking more about Chandler's entrepreneurial adventures and story, which is fascinating. Chandler's brother Seth Bolt, I think they must be related, play in a Grammy-nominated band called Need to Breathe. And you can see them on Rolling Stone. Amazing band. So that's a really good fun fact. And I suppose during COVID, that's a really good name as well. So that'd be rather appropriate. That's actually that's a dad joke. Sorry about that. Okay, we slipped that in. Okay, Chandler, you obviously very driven, and I met you in a restaurant in San Francisco about 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was now, next to Twitter's headquarters. And you'd already started Self-Publishing School. I discovered you, and we've had a bit of a chat, and we've done a bit of, collaborated on things together over the years. And so I was very impressed by you. And you moved from San Francisco now to Los Angeles, and now you've moved to Austin, Texas. Yeah. And there's reasons for that, but we won't go into that. They're all fun facts. Less tax is one of them. As a good entrepreneur, should try and minimize tax, but not evade tax, as we know. So there's a big difference. So minimizing tax is also very important. In other words, maximize revenue, minimize costs. So Chandler, where did the entrepreneurial spirit initially, when did you sort of feel it, starting to rise? When did that happen?
Gosh, high school really. And then ultimately fostered in college and beyond. So in high school, I started my first couple of companies. The first one was a landscaping, lawn care, and pressure washing business.
Yep.
And then did a kind of a school canteen. And then in college, I did an internship. It's kind of like a franchise meets internship It's called Student Painters. They teach you how to run a business by running a house painting business. So painting houses, and I did that, and then I was number one in the company and number one in the country. And then basically that gave me the confidence to drop out of school. So I realized I'm learning how to run a business from professors who have never ran a business. That doesn't make too much sense. And I was learning so much more actually doing it that I said, all right, I think I need to drop out and just go all in on this whole business thing. And so that's when I did that, and failed a lot, but ultimately kind of failed my way to self-publishing school, and to writing a couple of books. And then those were one thing that actually did well. And then that kind of parlayed into self-publishing school. And it's just kind of just snowballed ever since then.
Cool. So the question I do love to ask is, where did the idea for
Mm.
publishing school come from? I think I heard a hint of it in the last sentence you mentioned, but where did it originally come from?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's one of those things where I'd published a couple books, they did decently well, and then people kept asking like, "Hey, how are you doing this?" And I would just get on the phone with them for an hour for free, just to be a nice person, and just say, "Hey, I did this, do this, do this. You try this," and then,
Yep.
"Hey, good luck. Hope this helps." And so you do that enough times, and it's kind of I believe that the market votes with their wallet, right?
Yep.
And one of the biggest mistakes you can make as an entrepreneur is to try to guess what people want.
Yeah.
And you need them to tell it to you, and not just tell it to you, but actually vote with their wallet. And so that was where that's what I did in this case, where it's kind of like one of those things where you only get smacked in the face so many times before you turn around and look, and you turn around and look, and there's a line of people. And that's what I realized was happening. I was just totally failing at this business I was trying to start, because I didn't ask people what they actually wanted. And I just built the thing that I thought people wanted. And then meanwhile, everyone was telling me that they wanted help with this thing, which is the book thing. And then finally I said, hold up, maybe I should start charging for that. And we opened up our first cohort of what became self-publishing school. And that was 44 students. And I want to say it was like over 60% of them wrote and published a book in just over 6 months, which, I mean, that's just crazy. And so that's when I realized, oh, wow, we can replicate this in other people. Like, let's start doubling down on this. And then it's just been a series of just focusing on
Mm.
that, and continuing to get better at what we do, and execute and improve and repeat kind of over the years. And so then fast forward to today, and we've published about 6,000 books over the last 6.5 years. We've helped a ton of people write books, publish books, grow their businesses, like all that stuff through books.
Mm. In other words, you listened to what was working, what didn't.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
and we quite often, what we do is we try and force things to happen because we think that's where the money is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, there's got to be money, but what you've got to do is listen to people's reaction and trying to guess what they want. And a lot of people go down and spend what, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of building a platform before they even test anything.
Mm-hmm.
So and then they discover that people don't want what they want because they actually haven't been listening. But the
Yeah.
other reality that a term I've heard used the other day um, was that people's honest feedback starts to happen only when they start paying for your product.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Because basically, if everything's for free, well, no, they're not going to be honest with you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they start paying for something and they're not quite getting what they want, then you're going to start to get complaints in the inbox. So, so how long ago did you start the self-publishing school?
Yeah, we launched in February of 2015. So it's been about 6.5 years, going on 7.
Yeah, I think I met you about a year or two into the journey, I think, actually, in
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I'd heard about you, and I'd self-published my book back in 2012, and that went very well. It was called Blogging the Smart Way.
Mm-hmm.
And I self-published it myself. I wrote 38,000 words, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, so let's talk a little bit about, Brett, the process, the book publishing process, and how you
Right.
make it easy for them. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people go, write a book. Oh God, that's so hard. There's a lot of moving parts because number one,
Yeah.
you got to get the idea, you got to structure it, then you've got actually got to write it, then you've got to show up every day or regularly, and actually put pen to paper or touch the keyboard and put it on the screen. So How would you describe simply and distill from idea to successful book selling? Because that's where we're
Yeah.
really getting to, isn't it? And
Yeah.
also the other thing about book selling is it's not necessarily about making money from the book. It's about building a personal brand that actually gives you
Yes.
credibility as well. So
Yes.
we can talk about that as well. So quickly
Yeah.
tell us about the process, distill that so our listeners can understand what the self-publishing process looks like from idea to promotion.
Yeah. And so I'll break this down into 2 or 3 parts. So
Mhm.
first and foremost, I mean, just with the caveat, I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD. So if I can write a book, I promise there's probably a lot smarter people listening to me right now that you have more knowledge and experience in the topic that you'd write on than I do, and then a lot of people do, and that's why you're qualified to write this book. And so I think in that though, I had to figure out, I think my thing that I'm talented at is making complicated things simple because it's what I have to do. It's like, all right, if you can explain it simply, I'm not getting it. And so
I totally get that, mate.
it's like, can I write it out? Can you write it out on a napkin, or can you just like, I don't need
And
the whole.
I want it in 3 points. That's it. Don't tell me
Yeah,
anything more than that. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So that's kind of how I look at this. And then also, as you said, there's a concept, I call it leveraged impact. And I think that's the powerful thing about books is you do all this work once to create a book. And then that book goes on to impact thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people. Right. But that's leveraged impact. And so how do you structure a book to grow your impact, to grow your income and your business, and really bringing in like business? That's for a lot of our customers. That's what they care about. So that's kind of the backdrop, and then getting super practical, the overarching process. So I just published this book, called Published. It's the second edition, but basically I outline in there's 8 milestones. And so the 8 milestones is this is where to go from idea or no idea to launch, like your book is launched. So milestone 1 is mind mapping. Milestone 2 is turning that mind map into an outline. Milestone 3 is creating and writing your rough draft. And then milestone 4 is the editing, and specifically self-editing. So those first 4 milestones create it's an acronym. It's called the More Writing Method, right? And so this is how you write your book faster and better, and a higher quality book is MORE: mind map, outline, rough draft, editing, right? So you've got self-editing, then milestone 5 is professional editing. Then you move into cover design. Then you move into milestone 7, which is formatting. So like actually getting the book ready to publish and all the other additional things that you have to do there. And then milestone 8 is the launch. And so those are kind of the 8 milestones. And that's how we like to structure things is, all right, what are the checkpoints? And as a student or as a reader, how do you just take that very next step? And nothing matters except for that next step or that next milestone. And then you just keep moving through the process. And next thing you'll know, you'll have the book published and launched.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, in fact, I do have your wonderful workbooks that you use as part of it that outline that, and I've used them in the past
Oh,
as well.
yeah, thanks.
So, because Chandler sent out to me over the years different resources which are
Yeah.
fantastic. So, you let's get into so you're writing the book. Okay, so writing the book is one thing. Draft, everything else, the structure, I get all that. So what are the best ways to promote the book, and also what are some of the other benefits of writing a book? Okay, so number
Yeah.
one, let's talk about before we get into the marketing. How do you go? What would you recommend to promote a book well that's yours?
Mm-hmm.
And the other maybe questions I'll just file these couple of ways. Why should you self-publish over getting someone else to publish? I know the answer to some of those questions already.
Yep.
So, what are some of the benefits to a writer when they write a book? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what
Yeah.
are some
So
of the benefits?
benefits, I look at it, it's the impact, income, and growing your business, right? So how do you use your book to do those 3 things? And then if you have a business, writing and publishing your book is going to help you get more leads, sales, and referrals. And so I look very specifically in those buckets. And so this is why I just relaunched the second edition of the book published. Is I know this is one of the best things that I can do to grow my business. People will buy this book, they'll read it, and then for the right people, they'll say, hey, this was really helpful. Like, I'd love to work with self-publishing school. They'll book a call with my team. They'll sign up for self-publishing school. So if you're a business owner, it's a no-brainer to increase. I mean, you have a sales funnel, right? Which is traffic to leads to some sort of sales mechanism. Maybe that's a sales call, and then there's sales call to show up, and then there's show up to close, and then that's the process, right? So I look at how do you use a book in every step of that process, or in the highest leverage steps of that process, to increase your conversion rate. So you're bringing in more leads, more of the people who know about you are deciding to do business with you. And then you're turning customers or prospects into referrers, so that they can actively refer you business. I think a lot of people have heard a book is the new business card.
Yep.
You give someone a business card, they're going to throw it away within 24 hours. But if you give them a book, they're going to keep it in their home, at their office, on their desk, whatever. And every time they see it, they'll think of you. And so that's the power of the book. And those are the benefits of writing a book, and how it specifically can help people on the business side of things as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a lot of people think they're going to get rich from a book, but not many people get rich from a book. You can earn a reasonable amount of cash flow, and I did when I launched mine. And so some of the questions I also have are things like, we've all got a lot of ideas about a book.
Yeah.
And then you're going, oh, should I write on that? Should I write on that?
Yeah.
Should I write on that?
Yeah.
So which one do you choose? Is there some magic sauce for that?
Yeah. It's so funny. It's like, I'm trying to send you a copy of my book. We're having a real bear of a time with Australia. Yeah, it's like you're reading off the table of contents, this book. So there's the chapter 4, I talk about what to write about. And so I found that people, they're typically in one of 3 camps. Camp 1 is, I know exactly what I want to write about. Camp 2 is, I'm not quite sure, or maybe I've got a vague idea, right? And then camp 3 is, I've got way too many ideas. Like, I don't even know where I'd start because there's so many ideas. And so either way, I recommend, it's kind of a 2-step process. There's the idea finder, is what I call it, which is if you're not quite sure. And then, so I would say, hey, what do you get paid for as your job or in your business? And you probably have years or decades of experience on that thing, that if I were to try to do that thing, there would be a gap between what you know and what I know. And in that gap is a really great book. So that's the best place for most people to start. What are you passionate about? What do people come to you for advice on? Or if you're a business owner, what are the broken record conversations that you just keep having over and over and over again with every new prospect or client? That's probably your book topic. And now a lot of times people will dismiss that because they're like, I'm so tired of talking about this thing. Well, guess what? If you're tired of talking about a topic, it means you probably know a lot about it. And the best way to stop talking about it is to write a book and then point to that book and just say, hey, yeah, great question. Check out the book. Right. And then come back to me and I can answer any other questions that you have. So you just bring more leverage on your time. And so that's like the coming up with the idea phase. But then, to your point, how do you choose? Like, if I've got multiple ideas, there's 3 questions that I ask and recommend that people ask. Question number 1 is, which one can I write the fastest? So I have the most content or life experience on this topic, and I could get a rough draft done. And then that kind of parlays into question 2 is, which one am I most likely to finish? So not only am I just going to get started, but I'm actually going to get a rough draft done. And then question number 3 is, which one's going to make me happy? Which one am I going to enjoy writing? And those are kind of the 3 questions that I ask if someone has too many ideas, and then they can narrow in on which idea to write first. Because we only have 2 rules when we work with people at self-publishing school. Rule number 1 is you can't edit while you write. We all know someone who has 5 perfectly written chapters in their unfinished book. Yeah. All right. But then rule number 2 is you can't write more than 1 book at a time. So that's why it's so important. You ask those 3 questions, you narrow in on one idea, you write one book, and then you can repeat the process, but only write one book at a time.
Mm, I love it. It's I think the one that I really liked was, what are all the questions that people ask you all the time, especially as a business?
Yeah.
What big problems or problems are you solving in your business all the time? You could write down maybe 10 questions and then you got 10 chapters.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mm,
No doubt.
yeah.
And that's kind of the mind mapping process is what that was step one, which I would say if you're listening to this, as soon as this interview's over, grab a blank sheet of paper and write your book topic in the middle of the page and put a timer for 15 minutes and write out, to your point, everything that you can think of on that topic. So those broken record conversations, ideas that you have, stories that you've told or could tell on this topic, books that you read, just start going. And what you'll realize, or at least what most people realize, is, hey, I've got a lot of content on this, and this can become a full book. And then that's where it goes from mind map to outline. You start to structure your ideas into an outline, which is exactly what you said. Like, all right, now I've got 10 to 15 chapters, and then you use that outline to write the draft of the book.
That's cool. Now, another question I have, which is raising its head more and more, is that when you write a book, there's maybe a bunch of different audiences, personas that you are maybe writing it for in your mind initially. So should you choose one niche? Because essentially with a book, you're starting to create a little bit of a tribe and community around that book because of the topic. For example, it could be that you're going to help, for you for example, like, are you helping retirees write a book? Are you helping millennials write a book? Are you helping stay-at-home mums that write a book? Or are you just helping anyone write a book?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. My recommendation, I mean, I'm sure some people have heard this, is the riches are in the niches, right? And so niche down as much as possible and get as specific as possible. And most people try to write a broad book because they don't want to exclude people or miss out on an audience of people that could buy their book, but then no one knows if it's for them or not, right? So I would much rather be too exclusive and specific, and then other people will say, oh yeah, that's probably for me too. But the people who it's definitely for will say, yeah, that's definitely for me. And so that would be my recommendation. And that's actually kind of how we've done it with self-publishing school. Is we started out, it was for first-time authors writing nonfiction books. Like that was probably the first year and a half of the business. We were really focused on that. And we still are, and we still do that at a high level. But since then, we've rolled out our children's book school. We've rolled out our fundamentals of fiction and story program for fiction books. We've rolled out our full-time fiction program for fiction authors who want to make a full-time living. We rolled out our Sell More Books program. It's like all these different things, but all those products solve a very specific problem for a very specific market. And so we're not trying to go broad and with one product just to solve everyone's problems, just like I wouldn't recommend one book to solve everyone's problems, and get more specific, and it'll be a better book, and you'll sell more copies.
Awesome. I think that's really great advice, because what you can do then is, and I'm sure you did initially, is you can start with a minimal viable product, which tests the market before actually trying to do everything.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
So you could have been self-publishing school for kids, older people, cartoons, whatever, storybooks, fiction, non-fiction, list goes on. So, and I think that's really, really important, is that if you can just solve one problem or provide the answer to one problem, and be very clear on what that is and who that audience is, you can expand it later once you've nailed the actual process for the minimal viable product, and also get the feedback you need.
Yeah.
To say, what do you need? Did you create a community? Like, you obviously created community. Did you run Facebook Lives or whatever you were doing back then as well? So you had the content. Did you start building a tribe and community and movement around this as well?
Yeah, we did that pretty much from the start. We did a Facebook group pretty early on, and that was a core place. But what we did is, I mean, we followed exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of this, which is the sell, then build. And so validate the idea and then build the product. And so we sold our first cohort of 44 students. And then basically in that case, the product wasn't even created yet. But we said, hey, we're gonna craft this directly to what you need. So we dripped out content 1 week at a time. And it was based off of the feedback of what people wanted to learn and what people needed help with. And then we had live group coaching calls every single week. And then we had a one-on-one coaching call every single week, which is actually like a lot of these things are pretty similar to how like the structure of how we structure things now with self-publishing school. We don't do drip content anymore. It can be self-paced, but all the other stuff. And so that's how we started doing it. And that's where I think, people make progress is because they have the curriculum they have the curriculum that they can follow and self-study, but then they have one-on-one accountability and then group coaching and group accountability. So it's a little bit more than just them. And maybe a little bit more than just them and their coach. So that's how we built it. And then the community really is, it's consistently one of the things that people rave about and talk about is just because it feels like, okay, I'm not alone doing this thing. Because a lot of times as aspiring authors, it can feel like I'm the only weirdo in my group of friends that wants to do this. and nobody, and other people were like, hey, why are you doing that? Who are you to write a book? Like all these things. And so it feels like, okay, I can plug in to a group and to a home of people who really, get me and are alongside me through this journey.
Cool. Now, the big question rising out of that for me is that if you can do all these one-on-one coaching and there's just you're essentially almost trading time for money. And as we know, as an entrepreneur, that's actually, look, you can maybe make a couple hundred, $200,000, $300,000 a year doing that, trading time for money, coaching all the time. How did you scale you so that you weren't doing the one-on-one coaching? How did you transition from, because I'm sure you initially did it.
Yep.
So how did you scale yourself, or how did you remove yourself from that equation?
That's a great question. Yeah, it was one of the first things I really, because when you were in fulfillment mode, you can almost be on this seesaw of sell, fulfill, sell. Oh crap! I've got all this fulfillment, and then I'm doing all this fulfillment. It's like, oh crap! I've got no sales and no revenue. And then you just kind of yo-yo back and forth. And so pretty early on, I realized, all right, I'm gonna have to pass this. Like, I'm gonna have to pass this off for if I'm gonna be able to free up my time to like proactively work on the business. And so for me, it's kind of, and I learned this the hard way, is one of those things you wish they would teach in school, is just the power of systems and process. And I just remember, I'm an avid reader and I dropped out of school, but I operated as if I said, all right, I need to operate as if I'm still in school. It's just the mechanism of learning is going to change. So instead of going to class, I'm going to be reading books. I'm going to be going to conferences. I'm going to be going through online courses, but I need to operate like I'm still in school and learn like I'm still in school. And so I've read a book a week for years and years, and books are, another reason why I'm so passionate about books, right? Books change lives. They change the lives of readers and they change the lives of authors. And I call it a $15 mentor, right? It's like the smartest, most successful people on the planet have distilled the best stuff that they know into a book. And all you have to do is pay $15 and spend a handful of hours and you can learn all the smartest stuff that they know. And so that's what I started doing, is reading all these books. And then just to kind of circle all the way back, is the thing that kept popping out is systems, process, systems, process. And I realized, oh man, if this is going to scale beyond me and it's not just going to be, like you said, just a high paying job, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to build a business long-term, that is, you can't do that. And or if you want to build a scalable business where you do not want to be the one fulfilling, you can't do that. And so that's when I said, all right, I've got to put systems and process around this and make this about the process and not about me, and then teach other people in the process. And so we took some of our earliest successful students and we turned the best ones into coaches. And that was the big thing, big kind of core value for me is teach what you've done. Kind of like I dropped out of school because I was learning how to run a business from professors who never ran businesses. I just think teaching something that you haven't done is very difficult, and you can do it at an okay level, but it's just totally different if you've done it. So ever since then, that's kind of been a core value for us as well. And the people that we hire as coaches is they've published books. Either they've published books or they have a deep teaching background, and they publish a book within like the first 6 months or a year of joining the team. And so that's how we started doing it. We built out a coaching team, and we've got, gosh, 6 or 7 coaches on the team now. And it's worked really, really well.
Yeah, because that's a question a lot of people, entrepreneurs, when they start off, especially, they start a coaching business and they're going, well, and they get in and they're going, like you said, uh, fulfill, sell. And it's just this
Yeah.
non-virtuous cycle. That's what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and I love the fact that and that's one thing that I've discovered too, is running this podcast every week and interviewing entrepreneurs such as yourself, and learning from really sharp minds that have, had the highs and lows of running a business. And process. It sounds
Yes.
boring as batshit, but it's actually,
Yes.
actually where the magic happens.
I agree.
It is, and it's a whole mindset shift, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's night and day. Well, because I'm going to imagine a lot of people hear this and they're like, boring. Let's talk about the fun stuff. And also, I can't systematize this. And that's how I thought early on. It's like, oh yeah, this is just so unique, and I'm just so talented that you can't systematize this. It's different for every person. It's different for every student, and you just realize that systems and process set you free, and it doesn't mean you're a robot. Or that you're asking people to be robots. It just means that you have a process, and it actually gives them freedom to be creative within that process. But while delivering an exceptional service to clients, to students, to that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not sexy, it's not interesting, or it is interesting, but it's just not like intrinsically interesting to a lot of people. And it wasn't to me, but I realized, I think in phases of business, you realize these things where you're like, I suck at that. And if I do not get better at that, this is not going to grow. So I can either ignore that and keep doing what I'm doing, or I can learn to love that, or hire someone that loves that, and then make sure that we get good at that, because that's how we're going to grow. And that's how we're going to take the business to the next level. And so that's very much how I felt about systems and process.
I love the sentence. Systems and processes will set you free.
Yes. Yes.
I think I haven't heard it stated that way before, but it's so true. If you're going to scale your business, remove you from the equation, which is important. Doesn't mean you remove yourself from the ideation and making sure you manage the company culture, and but removing yourself from the doing to being the conductor is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Now, the other question I was going to have too is, well, not the question, but the other truth that I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is that reading a book seems like a waste of time because you're not doing. But a lot of us have the guilty pleasure of reading, going, oh, I'm going to read for an hour or two today.
Yeah.
And you're going, oh, because I enjoy reading so much that if I'm enjoying this is not work. So, but I've read nearly 60 books this year as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ideas that are used to actually polish what we do, create culture, the 12-week year I came across, which we're weaving into the company now. All of those things, in other words, still focused, but in other words, how can I keep polishing the process and systems? How can I keep building a really healthy culture? How can I make sure that everyone feels they're on board? Which are a lot of the X factors that are, soft and fluffy. But the trouble is that you've got to be soft and fluffy because we're not bloody machines. We're humans that need some love, don't we?
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
And that's, and I would even just say, on the reading piece and the reading but not implementing, it's the Abe Lincoln quote where, if you give me whatever the number is, it's like, if you gave me eight hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 5 sharpening the axe,
which is reading.
And that's that is reading. And it's a lot of times reading about the fluffy or the non-sexy stuff, because those are the things that, like you said, we're in the business of working with humans. And this is a people business. Every business is a people business,
It
whether you
is.
want it to be or not. It's like I heard somebody one time, they're like, yeah, I'd really love my business if you just took away the employees and my customers. It's like, what? If you took away your employees and your customers, you wouldn't have a business. You're in the people business. Everybody's in the people business. And so a lot of times that means learning about the fluffy, non-linear stuff.
Mm. The other thing that you mentioned before, which um, about books, and there's a lot of people that can't read books because they're dyslexic.
Mm.
My son's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ways of learning. It's called YouTube. It's
Yes.
called audio
Yeah.
books, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot, especially today, into the digital age, well and truly. You've got so many different types of media that can actually get you past that obstacle if you're dyslexic and have a reading problem.
Agreed.
The other thing I love, it reminded me of, is essentially a quote or a saying by Stephen King, the famous fiction writer. He only makes about $40 million a year from his writing, so you know, but his book on writing is one of my favourites.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and you mentioned it, that when you pick up a book and read it, this is an expert distilling decades of experience, passion, and learning into a few pages. And you can read that 10 years later after written it. Stephen King says books are time machines.
Mm. Yeah.
And it is so true.
Yeah.
In other words, books can take you into the past, they can take you into the future, and they can actually, the writer is sharing his past experience and expertise with you today,
Yeah.
but it was written maybe a decade ago or 100 years ago.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So the other question I had, I've got a lot of questions actually. It's really, really
Mm-hmm.
good. Good questions help you get great results. We need to ask better questions, don't we? How do you write a great book in a short amount of time? I think that's a
Yeah.
pretty important question to ask because I'm sure a lot of our readers and viewers are going to want to know how that is done.
Yeah. One of the biggest excuses that I hear for not writing a book, because New York Times says that 81% of people want to write a book. We know that less than 1% of people actually do it. So why is that? I think people don't have a proven process to follow, and they don't have accountability to keep them going. And then for a lot of people, they don't have the why now. And so they say, I don't have time, or the timing isn't right. And so they just keep pushing off, maybe someday, maybe next year. And then maybe someday becomes maybe never. So a couple of things, you're going to have to get started before you're ready on this book writing journey. But then how you actually do is you're gonna have to make the time and then follow that more writing method that I talked about. So mind map, outline, write. And I break this down one chapter at a time. And so really so that's the process. And then you repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter. And so we've got this, it's called a 30-day rough draft challenge. And I talk about it in chapter 7 of my new book. But basically, I talk about mowing down your rough draft one chapter at a time. So you mind map and outline the book as a whole. Then you drill down a chapter at a time and you mind map, outline, write, repeat. Mind map, outline, write, one chapter at a time. And for some people who speak better than they write, you mind map, outline, speak. Right. And so you just keep repeating that process chapter by chapter by chapter. And then the next thing every 2 or 3 hours, you've got a chapter done. And if you're writing a 15 chapter book, well, then there you go, whatever that is, 45 hours, let's call it, of maybe 60 hours of writing time. Now that's on the low end, and that's a rough draft. But you can, I use it as an example to just say, hey, you can make a lot more progress a lot faster than you think.
Yep. And that begs the question is, what's a good number of words for a good book?
Yeah, great question. So it's typically about 30. Well, depends on the genre and the type of, or the purpose of the book, from 15,000 words, which would be like very small, lead magnet, really, if the type book for your business, up to more traditional nonfiction is, somewhere between 30 to 70,000 words is kind of the ballpark there. And then you can go lower for children's books, higher for novels, So it kind of runs the gamut, but that's the general ballpark.
Okay. I think the first book I wrote, Blogging the Smart Way, was actually 35,000 words. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm thinking of writing a book for the new product we're launching soon, which would be more a lead magnet as the kernel of what would be a longer book, but also by doing that is test the book concept um,
Yes.
as well. So, all
Yes.
right. So, the other question I have is, how do you successfully launch a book?
Yeah. It's so there's a couple of things I look at when I think about this, and it's, you see me keep looking at the book. It's like this thing about having new concepts and curriculum and stuff. You're like, all right, I need to pull out this book real quick.
Mate,
So
we all have cheat sheets. It's absolutely fine.
so there's pre-launch prep, then there's launch week, then there's selling books after the launch. And so I'll drill into the actual launch, but just with the caveat of, I talk about this concept of the 1 year launch. And I think too many people follow what I call the Lamborghini launch. And so if you know anything about Lamborghinis, they're fast, they're sexy, they use up a lot of fuel, but they're going in a flash, right? And so people focus on launch week and they want to be flashy and all this stuff, and then the book just vanishes and it doesn't sell, right? And so instead of that, I recommend taking the Toyota Camry approach with your book, which, Toyota Camrys just keep going and going and going. And so how can you set up your book to sell books long-term and not just during launch week? And so specifically how I look at this is I call it the launch triangle. But in the launch triangle, it's kind of the three essentials you need to use to launch your book. So number one is a launch team. This is a small group of people that support your book, right? Or support you or the topic of your book. Could be 15 people. It could be 50 people. As the time of recording this interview, I'm kind of wrapping up the launch of the newest book, and I had about 150 people on that launch team. And so you got a launch team. These folks read the book ahead of time and leave a review on day one. So now all of a sudden you've got 5, 15, 50 reviews right out of the gates. And they get a free copy of the book and, a bunch of stuff like that. But that's a launch team. If you do nothing else, just do that. You're going to launch with more momentum, more reviews, and all that stuff. So that's number one. Number two, I've kind of already alluded to this, is reviews. And so getting as many reviews as possible during launch week. And this involves one-on-one outreach and follow-up. Mm-hmm. And then number three is promotions. And this is where, this is kind of an accordion where, depending on your time, the time that you have, the budget that you have, how far out from the launch, your resources, all that stuff, it can be, we've got 2 launches that I talk about in the book. There's the MVP launch, so the minimum viable product launch. Then there's the traditional launch. And it's really just a spectrum, right? And so somewhere on that spectrum, depending on your time, resources, and all that stuff, will be the scale of promotions that you do. And so there's a lot of fundamental promotions kind of regardless, but that's the overarching thing. And then I think of, how do I turn these one-off promotions into evergreen assets and create as many assets as possible that will sell books long-term? I mean, you're great at this, Jeff. I've learned a lot of this from you, which is just like content and SEO as assets, right? And then that content then continues to rank, continues to get traffic, continues to bring in books. So it's like a bunch of stuff, like this podcast interview, for example. This is why I'm prioritizing podcast interviews as part of the launch. Is this podcast interview will live hopefully forever, right? And then so now, months from now, years from now, someone's listening to this and saying, hey, this sounds interesting. I want to grab Chandler's book. And so it's just creating long-term assets through one-off promotions.
Yep. I love it. And I totally agree with playing long game.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of people, want a quick fix, and they want it now. And there's nothing wrong with that. The trouble, if it's, you just don't want the Lamborghini approach, you want the Camry approach, which I love that.
Yes.
Okay. So you want a car that's going to do 1 million miles, not just 5,000 be parked in the garage. Mm-hmm. It's nothing wrong to have a piece of art, and I called a car, and cars are a piece of art. I just bought one recently, but I do enjoy it. If it's both aesthetic as well as a tool, awesome. Yes. So
Yes.
now the reality is too that playing the long game is important, and SEO takes time to earn. You can't just concentrate on that. Creating different variety of content that just keeps putting content out. One of the reasons I do the podcast is I create many pieces of content out of this, and I create 3 different types of media: text, video, and audio. YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, audio, content on the website, blog post. And out of that then rises the long game of creating assets. People going, oh, Jeff wrote this book 300 years ago. He's now dead. I'm now going to read it because it's really good stuff still.
Yeah.
Hopefully, look, in reality is recording this, publishing on the internet, on the big platforms and on multiple platforms, is that as long as the internet keeps running and the electricity stays on and we don't get hit by an asteroid, yes, you could live forever. It's just called digitally virtual living forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think one of the final questions, I'll let you go because I know you've got to be on another 20 podcasts after this, because you're doing a little bit of a hit on this. Look, how do you use books to grow a business? I think you've touched on it, but let's just have that out there as one focus question.
Yeah. So it's kind of what I alluded to earlier is I look at it as book to do 3 things is get more leads, more sales, and more referrals. And so how do you integrate it into your sales process to generate more leads? How do you integrate it in your sales process to increase the conversion rate? So people who already know about you, who choose to do business with you because of your book, the root word of authority is author, and you can't spell authority without the word author. And so when you become an author, your authority goes up, which improves. You can increase your prices. You will increase your close rate. You can increase the amount of referrals that you get. We give away copies of books to friends of customers through like a specific link. We say, hey, if you ever have anyone who says, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book, how'd you do it? Just send them this link. We can fill out a form. I'll send them a copy of my book for free. And so just little things like that help. That's a virtual introduction through that friend and through a free copy of my book, a physical copy. We actually ship them a copy. And the next thing you know, is we said, hey, we're sending you this book on behalf of your friend because it sounds like you're working on a book. What's your book about? How can we help? Right. And just segues perfectly into helping grow the business. So that's why the first edition of Published has generated, millions of dollars in business over the last 6 years since it was launched. And then that's why I said, all right, I've got to do an updated and second edition, because I was like, all of our content got better and that book stayed the same. So I said, all right, I need to overhaul this, and just doing the big promotion behind it, I knew it would generate a lot of just business for self-publishing school, and it already has. And I really think it'll generate hopefully tens of millions of dollars for the business over the next few years.
I think it's great. I think the term you used in the word authority is the word author, and you can build real authority as an author, credibility, which then you become a price giver rather than a price taker.
Yes.
And I think that's also another thing to understand is you're not just a commodity. You've created a unique piece of content that's yours, your ideas, your experience. And if you take enough time to polish that rough gem and turn it into an absolute jewel, it's amazing. And look, I think the important thing is just to get started, a lot of people. And so just to wrap it up here, what are the top tips you'd leave for people wanting to start writing a book?
Yeah. You got to get started before you're ready. The timing will never be right. You're going to have to start before you're ready. And what I encourage you to do is, in just a minute, as soon as this podcast interview is over, grab a blank sheet of paper, write your book topic in the middle of the page, set the timer for 15 minutes, and just mind map everything you can think of on the topic. And you'll be on your way to getting started with your book.
So, and then time management. How do you recommend to write a book? Is there routines? There's different strategies to do that, such as time blocking. What are some of the routines and time management that you'd mentioned that you found to work?
Yeah, I would say take the 30-day rough draft challenge. And so the 30-day rough draft challenge, it's very simple. It's 2 30-minute writing sessions per day for 30 days in a row. And in that you will make a significant amount of, you don't have to, you can do it in the morning, one in the morning, one at night. You can do one in the morning, one in the middle of the day, but 2 30-minute writing sessions per day for 30 days straight. And that's the 30-day rough draft challenge. And so for a lot of folks, you can even get a rough draft done in as little as that 30 days if you follow that process.
Awesome. I think some really great tips. So, how can they get in contact with you and Self Publishing School, Chandler?
Yeah, so 2 resources that would probably be most helpful. First and foremost, check out a copy of the newest book. It's called Published: The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold. This is a 10,000-foot view of all the best stuff that I teach. And so I created a link where folks can get a free copy of the book. So if you go to publishedbook.com/Jeff, so it's published book, like I published a book, publishedbook.com/Jeff. You can grab a copy of the book there for free. The first 50 people, I will print it, pack it, ship it, everything. You don't have to pay anything. All you have to do is fill out that form, just as a little thank you to Jeff for bringing me on here. So publishedbook.com/Jeff is the best and first way. And then if you'd like to book a call with my team and say, hey, let's chat about my book and see if it makes sense to work with Self-Publishing School, just go to publishedbook.com/apply. And you can book a call. We'd be happy to chat with you and about your ideas and your goals and kind of start putting together a plan.
Because you provide a whole sort of support, coaching.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's called selfpublishingschool.com.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Chandler. Great to see your smiling face, even though it's on the screen rather than across a table in San Francisco. There's a certain joy in actually catching up in real life that we both
Yes,
know.
sir. Yes, sir.
I can read your body language saying, he's not that interested in me, because we had a very romantic evening that night, didn't we?
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So
thank you for having me, Jeff. And maybe we'll get to when travel's allowed again. Maybe we'll get together back in person.
It's an absolute pleasure, Chandler. Great to see your smiling face and to see you thriving and flourishing. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.